Hello everyone, my name is Ailsa and welcome to another booktube video. Today I'm doing another of my Balancing the Books videos. If you've not been here before, Balancing the Books was started by Emma at Drinking by My Shelf, and it is a way to track which books you've received and either read or put out each month. I'm doing slightly different rules to Emma's version, so my rules for myself are, for every book that comes into my house and onto my to be read shelf each month, I have to either read or put out 2. So for example, if I receive 2 books, then I would have to read or put out 4. So far I had just been counting physical books as additions to this, although I was counting ebooks when I read them, so there was a little bit of disconnect there. But I think what I'm actually going to start doing is if I receive an ebook copy and it's a review copy and therefore I have a deadline of when I'm meant to read it, then I am going to count those as ones that contribute to me needing to read 2 more. So let's see how I got on this month. The first book I received this month, this is a proof copy, so that's not quite the final cover, but it is Smoke in the Glass by Humphreys. I took part in a blog tour for this book for Gallant, and I posted my review on just before the publication, I think it was. So I have now read that as well. Yay! This is a fantasy book. I believe that Humphreys has previously written crime or historical crime, whereas this is fantasy set in a foreign world. It is a world where there are immortals, and there's essentially 4 countries, each divided from the other by mountains, seas, etc. So 3 of them don't know that any of the others exist, and the 4th country is very mysterious in the background, but you kind of get the impression through the book that people there are trying to reach the others, and that's going to have big consequences for everyone. Also, in each of the 3 countries that don't know about the rest of the world, there are 3 different types of immortality. In all of them, you don't learn that you are immortal until someone tries to kill you and you wake up again a few hours later. In one of them, immortals can possess animals briefly. In another, they can possess other humans. And in the third, I think we don't know what happens there because the immortal there killed everyone else. But it was a very good book. It was really interesting seeing how that affects things, and there's a prophecy, and I sometimes go a bit funny with prophecies, but this one is a very vague prophecy in that someone who is 2 in 1 or not a normal person, something like that. The prophecy is that this person will be born and that they are going to save everyone or change everything or something like that. It's very, very vague, and you don't really hear what the specific prophecy is in the book. Either way, it was very, very interesting, and I definitely recommend that, and I will link in the description box to my written review of that one. The second book I got this month was an ebook from Mills & Boon as part of their Mills & Boon Insiders program of reviewers, and that is A Debutante in Disguise by Eleanor Webster. This is another one that was for review. Mills & Boon put things up each month that are then for review later in about 4 weeks' time, 3 or 4 weeks' time, so you have to be quite speedy with them, but luckily they are pretty short books. This is historical romance. I have now posted my review for this one as well, so I will leave a link in the description box for it. This is a book, it's historical romance about a heroine. With the help of her brother, she has disguised herself as a man and trained to be a doctor in London. And she is now continuing to disguise herself as a man and work as a doctor in her neighbourhood. The hero briefly met the heroine at a party before she went off and studied, and before he went off and became a soldier. He was then fighting in the Battle of Waterloo, and his best friend and his brother are both killed there, and his dad very soon afterwards. He's got scarring from his time in the army and at the battle. He's suffering from nightmares and flashbacks and things like that. And of course, in those days, they really didn't know anything like what we do today about things like post-traumatic stress or any other variety of things that could affect people after they've been in horrible situations like that. So he's drinking a lot and things, and then he and his sister go back to the area that they kind of are from, where the family estate is, and that happens to be where the main character, Letty, lives and is practicing as a doctor. And they then become entangled as he asks the doctor to look after his sister during her pregnancy. And as they've met in real life and she's kind of spending time in her real life as a woman with this sister and they're becoming friends, she's like, do I take the risk of continuing to treat this woman or not? It was a really interesting book. It was fun to see how the author portrayed it, that this woman could work as a doctor and keep up her disguise of being a man without anyone figuring it out. And it was a fun little quick read. I will link my review in the description box. The third book that I got this month was another review copy, and that is If Only by Melanie Murphy. Some of you, probably a lot of you, will know her from YouTube. This is her first fiction novel. She's previously written a non-fiction book. I haven't read that one, but I thought this sounded interesting. I really enjoy her channel, and I've enjoyed hearing about her journey through writing this book, getting close to publication and things like that. And I like the idea of the story. Basically, the concept is that, I want to say the main character is 25, but I could be wrong about that. In her mid-20s, I think, which is the age I am, so which is partly why I appealed, and her gran gives her a necklace that gives her the ability to go back in time and change a decision, or something like that, to revisit the if-onlys from her life. If only I'd done this, or if only I'd done that. I've literally read the first 2 pages of this, so I'm not really placed to talk about it at the moment, but I will let you know how I get on with that one. It's kind of at the top of my list for July. So that is 3 books in this month, which means that I needed to read 6 books. If you're following along, then that's 2 already, because there was Smoke in the Glass and A Debutante in Disguise. I'm also really pleased with myself this month because I read a lot of books that were on my TBR list for the month, and a couple that have been on there for a while. So first up is Leaf by Niggle by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a very, very short book. It's about 50 odd pages. It's essentially about like paying attention to what's going on in your life, try and be a good person, things like that. So it was interesting, not particularly gripping. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I held on to it and gave it a try, but it's very take it or leave it really. The next one was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This book had been sat with about the last 50 or 60 pages left to read on my bookshelf for probably about 2 years, because we've now lived in this flat for 2 years, and I think I got that far into it before we moved, which is really bad. So I was so determined to actually get on and get that last bit read. This is a young adult fantasy. There are the Reds, who are the commoners and have no magical abilities, and then there are the Silvers, who are the elites with magic, and they are kind of the ruling class. And about a girl called Mare, who it's then discovered very publicly by the Silvers that she has magic, and they take her in and train her up, but as with any book, all is not as it seems. This book I stalled with it because it felt very, very samey, and there were twists and turns and betrayals, but none of them felt like that surprising. And I was reminded as I read this last little bit of the book this month, quite how flipping naive Mare is. And I just wanted to, like, you've grown up in such harsh conditions, like, I just wanted to give her a shake, like, wake up. I know she's a teenager, but she's not living the kind of life that teenagers do today in Britain or America. Like, it's the kind of life where I would have expected her to be a bit more attuned to reality and things. Maybe be a bit more pessimistic about life. So anyway, finished with that. I'm not going to bother with the rest of the series. A lot of my friends love these books, but it's just not for me. So that's 4, and then I have finished as well Carrying Albert Home by Hickam. This is another book that has been sat on my TBR for quite a while. I picked it up while I was working at HarperCollins. I've not been there a couple of years now. A woman is given a baby alligator as a wedding present when she gets married. They own it for several years until one day her husband decides that it's either him or the alligator, one of them has to go. And so they decide to drive from their home in a mining village in, I believe, West Virginia, to Orlando, where she used to live briefly while she was at college, to let go of the alligator there, and it's about the adventures that they have on the way. Their relationship as a couple is quite rocky. She's not happy living in the mining town, whereas it's his whole career. She's kind of hung up on a college sweetheart, even though nothing really ever happened with them. So it's about how their relationship changes as well. It was an interesting book in places. There were some bits where I flipped through because I said this is just too silly. And it does say it's mostly based on true stories of the author's parents, but there's also some exaggeration has gone into it, and I felt some bits, the exaggeration was just too blunt. And okay, it's a nice plot thing if you can link back in with characters you've seen earlier, but it was just too much of a stretch. So I think that's probably a solid 5 out of 10 from me. It's fine. I kept going, I read all of it, and I was quite determined going in that I would put it aside if I wasn't enjoying it. And I read all of it, so that's great. So that's 5 books that I actually read, which means I'm technically a book short, but I'm going to put out both The Witch's Kiss, which is book 1 in a trilogy, and The Witch's Tears, which is the sequel. I talked about The Witch's Kiss in my recent Trash My TBR video that was YA themed, and my friend Jean said that she really wasn't impressed with this one, and it sounds like the reasons that she didn't get on with it are reasons that I also would not get on with it. It sounded like there were a lot of tropes in there, so I'm quite happy to let these 2 go. Yay! So that's another month where I have balanced the books. Hooray! I'm quite pleased with this. Towards the end of last year, I wrote out exactly how many books are in my flat that I haven't read, and it was a quite high number, and really put it in perspective for me. So I really feel like it is starting to make a difference that I'm imposing these rules on myself. It's a bit of a challenge, but it gives me some push to read each month. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you're doing reading challenges of your own. I would love to hear from you. Yeah, I will talk to you again very soon. Bye!